территории Курской области. Насколько, сразу глобально спрошу, насколько мы близки к освобождению нашей территории от оккупантов?
Жень, смотрите, ситуация у нас складывается действительно на всем и Курском участке нашей линии боевого соприкосновения, и по всей линии ЛБС у нас получается в общей сложности где-то 10 участков, где наши подразделения вооруженных сил Российской Федерации двигаются с очень хорошими успехами, ежедневно забирая у противника особо для него важные участки, опорные пункты. И в этом свете, наверное, надо опять же подчеркнуть наше направление Курское. Хочу сказать, что противник ежедневно теряет действительно очень серьезные участки. Сейчас пока не буду озвучивать, но я так думаю, завтра вы услышите об очень хорошем.
The Russian army launched large-scale operations in the Kursk region on Thursday, the 10th of October, breaking through Ukrainian defenses according to both Ukrainian and Russian sources. According to the Kiev Post, a Russian attack backed by armored vehicles seemed to overwhelm forward positions held by the armed forces of Ukraine near the villages of Novo-Ivanivka and Veliny Shila and tore a gap around 3 kilometers or 2 miles wide in the western flank of Ukraine's 100-plus kilometer defensive line. The Ukrainian OSINT project, Deep State, reports that Ukrainian forces may have lost up to 14.7 square miles of territory in just one day and warns of a potential encirclement of Ukrainian troops in certain areas. That figure is corroborated by Hungarian media, citing a Ukrainian investigative portal who admitted that their forces lost more than a whopping 38 square kilometers in a single day. Ukrainian Deep State map also shows a loss of 38 square kilometers or 14.7 square miles. A figure that Ukrainian outlets now describe as the largest single-day loss of territory in the Kursk region for Ukrainian forces since September 14th. In fact, according to Medusa, Telegram channels say that the Russian forces have advanced up to 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles in the past 24 hours alone. They also report that, and I quote, in some areas, the Ukrainian armed forces must prepare for a complete encirclement. According to Ukrainian media, this is the largest Russian counterattack in Kursk after the previous one that the Russians launched last month. In quotation, "It looks like the enemy's front is breaking up in the Kursk region. There are reports of big formations being evacuated. In general, they are running." These were the words of a Russian mili-blogger, Alexei Zivov, as reported by in the Kiev Post. Now, as you will see, I stayed up late putting this report together for you guys because the news is coming out very rapidly by the hour. And as is usually the case with breaking events, much of the details are still shrouded in the fog of war. So what I attempt to do here is to put together several reports that I have been reviewing for the last few hours into one complete segment to try to give you a picture of the latest events in this major Russian counterattack in the Kursk region. So if you find value in this tedious report, please give me a super chat donation during the premiere or join my channel membership for exclusive videos and content. So without further ado, let's get into it. Telegram channel of the Russian army reported that they were able to break through the Ukrainian defense lines, occupy 5 settlements, surround 2 battalions, and cut off 2 supply routes. In opposition, the Ukrainian open-source investigative group Deep State agreed that the Russians have indeed breached part of the defensive line in Kursk. The 5 settlements taken by the Russians are located near the Lyubomovka area. Where they also allegedly encircled 2 Ukrainian battalions. The events of this Thursday have been described by Ukrainian deep state portal as a terrible day, and they went further to say, and I quote, "The worst situation is observed around Lyubomovka. The enemy is trying to establish a foothold near Novo-Ivanivka and Zeleny Shila settlements. These 2 settlements are about 15 kilometers from the Russian city of Sudzha, which remains under Ukrainian control and is about 10 kilometers north of the border with Ukraine." This was reported by Ukrainian media. The Kiev Post reported that another blogger said this about the Russian capture of Zeleny Shila, in quotations, "Control over the village will allow Russian troops to block enemy supply lines through Route 38K30. which plays an important role in the logistics of the Ukrainian armed forces. On October 11th, Ukrainian deep state reported that the situation remained difficult, but that Ukrainian forces were managing to stabilize it. They stated further that it was not possible to regain all of the lost territory. So here are what all the reports, as scattered as they are, say, and they are amalgamated from both Ukrainian and Russian blogs. Russian media outlets reported as follows on the 11th of October. As a result of successful attacks in recent days, Russian forces advanced north of Lyubomovka and cut off the strategically important main road between Korenevo and Sudzha, where Ukrainian units attempted attacks on the outskirts of the town but failed to gain a foothold and were repelled. As a result, the Ukrainian garrison fighting in Olgovka was cut off and threatened with complete encirclement. According to preliminary reports from the front, after several days of assault operations, Marines from the 155th Brigade of the Russian Pacific Fleet took control of Lyubomovka after prolonged positional battles. And you would note that the 155th Brigade of the Russian forces was mentioned by Apti Aledunov in the opening clip. The most damning of the reports say that the Ukrainian forces were not allowed to retreat because of the rapid Russian offensive. As a result, the Ukrainian grouping that attempted to resist in Lyubomovka was almost completely surrounded and suffered heavy losses. As a result of the Russian breakthrough, Ukrainian military communications and supplies in that large area were disrupted. Russian unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, are assessing the results of failed Ukrainian attacks along the road to Korenevo and count enemy losses on this small part of the front. Clashes continue in Novo-Ivanivka and villages nearby located along the road to Sudzha. At the same time, Russian forces advanced and launched an assault on the village of Nizhny Klin. As a result, Ukrainian forces remaining in the town of Tulsi Lug were taken in a pincer. On the northern flank, Russia continues attacks, advancing in the village of Malaya Lokhnia. Thus, the Russian military clearly aimed to surround the large enemy forces, threatening them with several cauldrons. Ukrainian forces that remain south of Korenevo are constantly under Russian fire. They were repelled at Olgovka, and are forced to flee further to the south. Apparently, the Ukrainian military command took some of their forces from Olgovka to Leonidovka and Novo-Ivanivka. In an attempt to reinforce the broken defense and slow down the Russian advance. Ukrainian servicemen were reportedly fleeing from their positions in an attempt to avoid encirclement. As a result, some of the settlements and Ukrainian strongholds are coming under Russian control almost without even fighting. Suffering losses, the armed forces of Ukraine retreated to Sudza, where on the southern flank Russians launched an assault on Plelhovo. This village is surrounded by three sides. Russia took control of a large forest area north of the village and cut the road from Plelhovo to Manovka. Clashes were reported near Ruskaya Konopelka. And the Russian military is expected to launch an assault on the village soon. But the disaster does not end there for Ukraine. While all this is going on, Russian forces also launched large counterattacks on the border of the Glushovko district. The armed forces of Ukraine were repelled from the areas of Veseloye, Medvezi, and Obukovka. Ukrainian strongholds were destroyed. According to preliminary reports, the retreating Ukrainians suffered heavy losses. Some were even captured as prisoners.
Слава России, 810-я бригада, сила.
Слава Украине в составе России, да?
The commander of the Chechen Akhmat forces operating in Kursk region commented on the ongoing hostilities. According to him, Ukrainian forces are lost on the battlefield, confused by the pace of the Russian offensive. Large groups of Ukrainian servicemen with military equipment are spotted escaping under Russian fire across the border to Ukrainian territory. Foreign military observers confirm Ukrainian retreat in the Russian region, noting that the panic in the ranks of the Ukrainian army is growing, especially after the loss of one of the strategically important fortresses of Ugledar. Ukrainian military expert Sergei Gurets said in an interview that currently the Russians have about 50,000 personnel concentrated in Kursk. All the enemy's efforts are aimed at ousting our units that are trying to hold onto the Kursk bridgehead, which was originally 60 kilometers wide and about 30 kilometers deep. The balance of force is now in favor of the enemy, as enemy airborne brigades and marine brigades, which are the largest operational reserve of the Russian Federation, have been deployed. The dynamics have entered a new phase. The enemy will try to advance to the logistical routes important for the Ukrainian armed forces. These disastrous events for Ukraine are being felt by soldiers on other parts of the front further south. Zelensky, of course, maintains the narrative that the Kursk offensive had slowed down Russian advances in eastern Ukraine. But France 24, relying on data from the Institute for the Study of War, shows that Moscow has made the biggest monthly gains since October of 2022, advancing on a total of 477 square kilometers or 184 square miles of Ukrainian territory in the month of August this year. French military expert Johann Michel said in quotations, "The Russian army's offensive is accelerating. We can't say that the Kursk offensive has fulfilled its goals. The offensive only showed something is possible with the Ukrainian armed forces, and that it is possible to enter Russia without causing an apocalypse," he added. Olivier Kemp, an associate fellow at the Foundation for Strategic Research, was asked whether the operation could be called a success. Militarily, he said, "Not really. The morale gains are temporary and fading. It makes sense in view of negotiations, but if you don't have negotiations in mind, it is completely absurd," he added. Russia, he said, can turn this initial setback into a real strategic asset. This last quote seems rather prophetic, given the recent events articulated above in this video. France 24 also reported on the comments of one Ukrainian soldier who chose to remain anonymous. His words, I think, are an apt way to end this video. Now the question is, what do we do next? Where will we get the people, he said, the strength and the means to continue this story or somehow complete it? Only God knows how this story will end, were his last words. And it seems, my friend, that God is speaking right now.